Hello beautiful people and welcome to another video. For a change, I'm gonna do something crazy this time. I'll cut 2000 dragon scales out of wood and I'll place them individually on this cupboard. Wish me luck. It's colorful. Looks like someone has done some painting on this. What do you think? What should we do with this? Well, I definitely need to strip it down because it looks awful. I think someone just used it for crafts or maybe as storage in their workshop or something like that, but this just isn't very special and I don't think it's worth restoring. So this is a very basic cupboard. It's very plain and straight, there's not a lot going on. This is not an antique. And for once I think I'm not going to try to restore it, but I'll just do something fun with it. I have a pretty crazy idea for this, something I haven't actually done before. Let's see how it goes. There's some trim on the door that I'm not going to need, so I'm going to take it off. Some of those pieces were already missing, but also I just needed a flat surface for what I was about to do. There's some screws holding this back piece, so I'm going to undo them. I think Mando was pretty interested in this project as well. Unfortunately, this top is just a thin piece of plywood with veneer on it, and the corners are damaged, so I think I'll just need to replace the whole thing because there's some deep scratches. These shelves are not looking great, but fortunately they are made from solid piece of wood, so this is gonna be super easy. If I can't remove these stains by sanding, I'll need to try oxalic acid, but this should be doable. And worst case scenario, I can just flip this upside down and use the bottom bit, which is much nicer. I'm going to use my Rotex, which is much quicker and more powerful than the regular sander that I've been using. Even with the new powerful sander, this still took a very long time, and I feel like most of the time on this project I spent sanding. The good thing about working with solid wood is that you can do a lot with it. You can bleach it, you can sand it, and you don't need to worry about going through the veneer, so even if there's a lot wrong with it, you can usually fix it. Even though I'm going to flip this shelf upside down, because it's got a bit of a curve, so it will actually help it. If I do it this way, and then it will just straighten itself out. I will apply some oxalic acid and see if I can remove this. The other shelf looks like it's in a better condition, though I think there are some stains in here as well. It wasn't good enough to just clean it, so I sanded it just like I did the other one, and I applied oxalic acid. I'm going to cover this so I don't need to worry about damaging the veneer or trying to restore it. I just need to remove the paint so I've got good surface for adhesion. This one actually is in a good shape, but there is some sort of stamp or whatever this is. So I think I'll need to sand them a little bit because it just isn't good enough. And there's some marks on this one. Maybe I'll find a brass one. There's a big stain here and I'm not sure I want to sand the bottom, so we'll see if it will come off with acetone. It's not really coming off, but I think I've removed the varnish, so I'll see if I can bleach it with oxalic acid. The oxalic acid is dry. The stains are not completely gone, but it's fine. I'm going to wipe this with water to deactivate the acid and leave it for the night so it can dry. And when I come back tomorrow, I'll do a little bit more sanding, but this is going to be the bottom, so it doesn't really matter because this side is okay. And just as I said, I did a little more sanding, and this was more about having a proper surface for adhesion because I was going to apply veneer to this top than just removing the paint. This doesn't look like a good substrate. I think I need to remove this entire piece of veneer. After sanding the top, I decided to change the shape of the trim on the edges, and I also sanded it. I'm going to put a piece of veneer on this top, but I just wanted to make sure that this is flush with the edge trim because it wasn't, and it was very uneven. I'm going to give this rough sanding so I've got good surface for adhesion, but this doesn't need to be pretty. Even though it didn't need to be pretty, it still was a lot of sanding and scraping, and I ended up sanding the inside of this cupboard as well as the bottom and the back, as I normally do because I'm a professional. I guess I could have gotten away with sanding because I'm going to stain the inside, but I just wanted it to be pretty. These sliders are a bit rusty and old, so I'm going to take them off and replace them with modern ones. Because it's been cold, Mando has been spending a lot of time inside the house, so Hugo is covering for him. After taking the sliders off, I vacuumed the piece and sanded pretty much everything. And it's kind of funny because I'm not trying to restore it and still did so much sanding.
"2,000 years later."
I'm not gonna lie, this time it really felt like 2000 years later. Anyhow, when I was finally done sanding, I decided to stain the whole thing in black.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
And yes, I know what you're thinking. Hold your horses. Just trust the process. I'm not gonna just leave it all black. This is basically a base for what I'm going to do next, which is the most important part of this whole project. It took a lot of stain, and after removing the mask and the glasses, I looked like a panda, or I guess more like a raccoon. I did exactly the same thing with the shelves, the piece that goes on the top, and the doors. And the back. The veneer on the top is obviously completely messed up, so I need to replace it. And I've got this cherry veneer, so I'm going to use a piece and put it on the top. To make my life a little easier, I decided to tape off all the bits I didn't want to get any adhesive on, but actually if you do make a mess, you can remove it with white spirit and it's very simple. I'm going to use this spray adhesive on the top and I'll use it on the veneer as well. After about 15 minutes, when the adhesive was dry to the touch, I applied it and I pressed it down with a tool that I made a while ago. Because I live in the UK, in November it gets really cold, so I need to do most of my work inside, because some finishes simply won't dry or I won't be able to spray them on. I try to heat my workshop, but it's not insulated and it sucks. As you can see, heating my workshop has been an ongoing struggle for me, and I have tried a few different options and none of them is good. These little ones, which are super cheap, they're just not powerful enough. This one takes forever to warm up, and this one is the one that I've been using. This only works when you're directly in front of it. I had something similar to this. It had a fan, but it was quite loud, so I couldn't use it when I was recording, which is most of the time. It was just annoying. This is a new tower heater and fan from Dreo. And I'm super excited because it's meant to be very quiet, and if that's the case, I'll be able to use it while recording. I'll put all the specs on the screen and you can pause the video if you're interested in the details, but I'm not gonna bore you with them because you can read it. This is the heater from Dreo that I just received, and it's actually bigger than I expected.
That's what she said.
What I'm really looking forward to see is if it's quiet, because if it's quiet, that means that I can use it while recording, and that will be a game changer because I won't get cold. And this is how super quiet it is in real life. I'm standing directly in front of it and you can barely hear it, which means you won't hear any noise in the background in my videos. And this is literally the most important thing for me. It also has a large modern display that comes with a remote control and all the bells and whistles that you might expect from a high-tech device, such as overheat protection, child lock, and tip-over protection. But this is not your average heater. It's also a fan and it's super powerful, and the mechanism that switches between the fan and heating function is completely seamless and you can hear it at all. I'll put a link in the description so you can check out Dreo for yourself, and thank you to Dreo for sponsoring this video. Now back to the project. After applying the veneer, I had to cut off the extra bits, so I basically used a metal ruler and a utility knife. I did get a little bit of the glue on the trim, but I just used some white spirit, a bit of elbow grease, and Bob's your uncle. This veneer isn't very clean, so I'm going to use white spirit and give it a wipe. And I'll do some sanding when it's dry. And now the fun part. I use Creative Space from Xtool, that's their software, to create this dragon scale shape, or I guess a teardrop, and I cut 2000 of them, plus several hundred of halves that I used on the edges. That took absolutely forever, even though this Xtool S1 40-watt laser is really fast. Just the sheer number of times I had to swap the pieces of plywood, open it, close it and run it, it just took ages. But hey, it was fun. Who else can say that they put dragon scales on a piece of furniture? I really gave this machine a good workout, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to get one of these. These are the hinges I removed from the doors, and they're very thin and they're plated. This is not brass, but I do have some hinges that are made from real brass, so I'm gonna use these instead. I used my wire wheel to clean them up, and I was able to put the doors on. I need to figure something out because the door is flush with this bit. Because I want to put the scales on the doors as well, I'm not sure there's gonna be enough space for me to open the door if I put the scales on it, so I think I might need to put like a bevel on this side so I can actually open the door without damaging the scales, if you know what I mean. So this is something that I'm trying to figure out. You probably don't know what I meant because I did a terrible job explaining it, but you will see what I meant. I don't think I was mentally prepared for what was about to happen next. I mean, I knew it was gonna be a lot of work because I knew I had 2300 pieces to glue on, but I didn't expect it to take about 3 hours per one side. The terrifying thing is that I was actually going to use small nails to attach these scales, but fortunately I was talking to Matt from Restorology the other day, and he said that maybe I should try hot glue, which literally I think saved my life and made the whole process much quicker. So shout out to Matt. I need to keep making these. I've already made 1200 of these. And yeah, it just takes so many, so I'm running the laser at the same time as I'm working on this. It's super easy to frame it, so I can do lots of them and it doesn't take a long time. I mean, it doesn't take a long time to frame it, but it took forever for all of them. I'm not gonna show you the whole process, just a little bit that I did on the door. I think I secretly like pain and suffering, because this is insane. This is the tricky part because obviously the door have hinges, so I need to work around them, but I don't want to interfere with the mechanism. So I'm just injecting a lot of glue underneath just to make sure that this stays on. I think it's been 2.5 hours already and I'm not even done. But it looks so cool. I don't know, there's something about looking at patterns and just things being nice and tidy that tickles my soul. These are super thin and very light, so they don't need a lot of glue, and I've actually tried to take some of them off because I wasn't happy with the placement, and they are on properly. So as you can see, it's actually not that difficult to go over the hinge. I had these half pieces that I cut. I'm just trying to make sure that the last 2 rows are very even, so I have a nice finish. Now I just need to cut off the extra bit. So because these scales are not flush, there is a gap between the door and the scales and it doesn't look pretty, and this is the bit that you will see when you open the door. So I cut it a bit shorter so I've got enough space to put this trim in, and I'm going to cover the edge with it, and we'll probably shave off a little bit because it's quite thick, but I think this is just going to protect the edge and the scales and just make it last a bit longer. I'm going to use a mixture of wood glue and hot glue. The hot glue will keep it in place until wood glue is dry, and I think I might put a couple of nails later on as well. Once I was done with that, I used electric hand planer just to shave off a little bit from the trim because it was too thick, and when I was finished I put some nails in just to make sure it wouldn't fall off. Not sure you can see that, but because I cut the door and made it a bit more narrow, there is enough space now for this trim on the other door, and that should close the gap. If I had these scales all the way to the edge, I wouldn't be able to open the door because they would hit the side of the cabinet. So I had to make some space, but obviously this doesn't look right. And also you can see the edges or the gaps. So I'm going to put this bit of trim over here. It's curved, so this should allow the door to open. I'm also going to cut out a little space for the hinges. After making cuts for the hinges and cutting off the extra bits of scales, I was finally ready to stain it, and Mando decided to make an appearance because I think it wasn't as cold. I'm curious to know what you're thinking right now because I like it. It's very different. This color is called rosewood. And I'm only going to stain the scales, and I'm not covering the rest of this cupboard because it's not gonna show on the black bits. I sprayed 3 coats of stain and several coats of lacquer, and it just got better and better with each coat. If you haven't skipped through the video, thank you, because it actually makes a huge difference and affects the algorithm. And as always, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who watches my videos for all the likes and comments. It really makes a huge difference. And special shout out to the channel members, you guys are the best. And if you'd like to support what I do, you can find all the links in the description, or you can just hit the super thanks button. Thank you. And look at that color, isn't that awesome? And it's only gonna get better. And if you remember, there were some gaps that I need to fix, so I'm gonna do it now. This way, not only I'll close the gap, I'll also color match it to the rest. And to do this, I'm just using repair wax that's in a color that basically matches those scales. When I was done with that, it was time for the lacquer, but that was a big challenge. It's so cold that this is not spraying properly. I need to warm this up. And unfortunately, that's gonna be the case for the next several months, because if the lacquer is really cold, it doesn't really spray, it just squirts out. So I basically put all the cans in warm water to warm them up, and that did the trick. When I was done, I left it in my workshop overnight so the lacquer would dry, and the next morning I used 800 grit pad just to smooth everything out. And I cut a little piece of wood, I put some holes in it and dyed it black as well, and that will serve as a door stopper. I used a couple of small screws to attach the stopper to the bottom of the cupboard, and then I wanted to do something extra, because you know, I'm all about being extra. So I took some gilding wax, and this is color copper, and I tried it on the scales just to make them shimmer, but I just didn't like the look, so I wiped it off. And then I put it on the black bits, and I used a rag with some white spirit to wipe off the excess and create kind of like a marble effect to blend everything together, and I did like it. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.